a big call for those organisations, and as I said, there's a tension here that if they do cut off the funding, then exactly what you say may happen. They can be seen to be stifling freedom of speech and suffer the backlash. If they don't, they can be seen by government and others to be helping to fund an organisation which poses a security risk, potentially, and making that judgment call, I guess, is what senior management is there to do ultimately. But as I say, I think the key thing is the organisation needs to act according to its own values and principles. Yes, bear in mind the influence and the persuasion and the impact on all of the various stakeholders that the organisation comes into contact with, but it then must do what is right according to its own values and principles. I think, though, one of the things that may potentially have been underestimated is that historically government was a very, very powerful influencer. Today, with the spread of social media, as we've seen during this incident, consumer power is so much stronger, so much more vocal than ever before, that perhaps the power of government, the overriding power of government, is not quite such a big influencer as it was a number of years back.
I'm going to come back to you in just a moment, Jonathan, because I want to ask you what advice you might give WikiLeaks itself. But let's bring back in Andreas Fink, who's been listening to this conversation from Basel in Switzerland. Is it possible for you at the moment at all to do any business for WikiLeaks?
No, we are just doing the credit card transactions for WikiLeaks, and that has been shut down by Visa and MasterCard. And, you know, all the donations are basically impossible to do at this moment.
But it is possible to get money to them in other ways, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're not involved in that part, but there are the possibility of doing wire transfers or send physical cash. But it's clear that most users, especially if they are from the United States, they're much more used to using credit cards. And if you send physical cash, there's a risk that it can get lost. If you do a wire transfer, you might face quite high transfer costs. So, you know, to donate, if you want to donate 10 euros, it might cost you $20 to do this. So it becomes quite ridiculous.
Yeah, and indeed, a lot of the donations are of the smaller kind. Let me ask you one other thing. When it comes to WikiLeaks itself and dealing with WikiLeaks, has this hurt or enhanced your company's reputation?
That's a good question. In one way, it has hurt us, of course, because we cannot do business right now with Visa and MasterCard, and you know, they basically own the credit card market. I don't know how big, but I assume like 90% of the credit card transactions of the world go through those two companies. So in that way, it hurts. On the other hand, you know, it gave us some interesting feedback from people. We get a lot of feedback that people would, you know, hold us up for standing up and against those big forces, because everybody else seems to be afraid from the U.S. government, and we're not. I mean, we have laws in Switzerland and we have laws in Iceland which protect those kind of things. And what scares me most, actually, is that the U.S. government is able to put pressure on those companies, and they don't even question that. I mean, we have laws. If somebody comes to me in Switzerland and they say, I have to close down my business because of whatever, then the answer would be, well, get an injunction from a judge. And you know, if the judge says it's illegal, then it's easy.
Yeah, let's put that point to Mark Faha. Looking at this from the government's point of view, how much leverage would they have had over companies like Amazon, PayPal, MasterCard, and all of those who have now said to WikiLeaks, we don't want to touch you at the moment?
I think, again, judging from the aftermath of 9/11, quite a bit. I remember then that pressure was put, for instance, on Swiss banks at that point to reveal accounts, etc., and that was done promptly. So, yes, I think they have leverage.
And in the longer term, do you think these companies are going to kowtow to the US government ad infinitum?
Well, you have to ask that. I can't speak for Visa and MasterCard, to be honest, so I can't tell you that. But,
what do you think, not only as a professor but also as an American citizen, about the way that the US government is approaching this? Is it making it a bigger problem, perhaps, for itself than it need to have been, or is there something darker behind all of this?
Well, yeah, I have my suspicions about the whole affair, even about Julian Assange, to be frank, because he comes from a murky background. He was affiliated with intelligence agencies. And we have, for instance, President Obama last year appointed somebody called Cass Sunstein as the head of the Office of Information. And this reminds me of sort of the ministries of information we used to have here in the Arab world and elsewhere in Soviet countries. And one of his premises was that the government should infiltrate social networking sites, should plant false conspiracy theories, should raise sort of false have these false flag operations of sorts, psyop operations, etc. So if you read his paper, which he wrote at Harvard on this issue, you will find that a lot of it rings eerily familiar to what is going on today.
You're going to have to help me a little bit here, because I'm not quite sure I would, if I was in charge of the US government, I'd want to see a lot of that stuff out there, whether it's dangerous, against the interests of national security, or simply embarrassing. Why would they want it to get out?
But how much of it has in fact been embarrassing to the US government, and how much of it has been embarrassing to, again, I repeat, Arab leaders or China? I mean, we knew China was spying on Google. We knew a lot of Arab leaders had suspicions about Iran, etc. We knew about Putin. We knew about Berlusconi. A lot of this is trivia. And all it really does, if you drop the balance sheet at the end, in my view, is to, it doesn't really embarrass the U.S. government. There are no real state secrets revealed. Nobody's going to be held accountable in Washington. At best, it could serve the interests of those who are, for instance, agitating within the CIA or the government for a war against Iran, for, putting more pressure on China, etc. These agendas are served by WikiLeaks thus far. I don't see much in the ways of sort of leading to real change in Washington.
Let's go to the UK, back to Birmingham. Jonathan Hemus there. I suggested that give you a couple of minutes to think about how you might advise WikiLeaks itself on sorting out its problems. But in a sense, I mean, the oxygen of publicity has been fantastic for it. Do you think it needs any help?
Well, I was going to make exactly that point. I think one of the things that WikiLeaks probably doesn't need is advice on public relations. It's done a fantastic job of getting this story across, and interestingly, it's done that both via conventional media, but also very much driven by social and online media as well. And it's done one of the things that all good PR campaigns do. It has utilised the influence of third parties to carry its message for it, to the extent now that a lot of this story is being driven by third parties rather than by WikiLeaks itself. So purely from a PR point of view, it's done a superb job in getting this story across.
What do you make of Mark Farhar's suggestion that all of this could have been put out there on purpose by the US government?
Frankly, it's something that I wouldn't have any particular knowledge of. I think from the point of view of the organisations that we're discussing now, the MasterCards and the Visas and the PayPals, I bet they wished it hadn't been put out there, because it has given them an enormous crisis management challenge that maybe they couldn't have anticipated. Good crisis communication is often about the planning and preparing for it. This is potentially a situation that they hadn't planned or prepared for. And of course there's a second crisis for them as well, which is the bringing down of their websites, or the difficulty that people are having to pay for goods using their services, which is a secondary crisis. People are now asking, how robust are their systems and how secure is my information? So they actually have a double crisis to deal with.
Back to Basel and Andreas Fink. I mean, you're at the sharp end of this. You're waiting to find out if, in fact, Visa, MasterCard will start to do business through you with WikiLeaks once again. But I want to ask you about the physical amount of money that was coming through your system. I don't want you to give me confidential information, but did you see the amount, the number of donations go up pretty rapidly once WikiLeaks got all these headlines?
Well, this is clear. You know, the more people know about WikiLeaks, the more donations you're going to get. Because, you know, people who don't know about WikiLeaks, they cannot donate. And the second effect, which we have seen, is when PayPal was cut down, that the amount has jumped up, which means that a lot of people were donating over PayPal before, because, you know, internet users or frequent internet users who understand the freedom of speech issues in the internet and who understand what WikiLeaks does are the ones who are going to donate most likely, and they all used PayPal. And when PayPal was gone, our volumes have increased.
Just a quick thought from you before we have to go, Andreas. Do you think in a few days' time Visa and MasterCard are going to come back to you and say, yep, OK, we'll carry on doing business with WikiLeaks, we think you're in the clear? Or is that it, do you think?
Well, actually, we don't know. I mean, we had the due diligence process being completed the last few days by the payment processor, and they go back to Visa, and then it's a decision Visa has to take.
Thank you very much indeed. We look forward to hearing from you, Andreas. Tell us whether, in fact, you got the business back online with WikiLeaks. Our thanks also to our other guests. Doha, Mark Fahar; in Birmingham, Jonathan Hemus; and, as we saw, via broadband from Basel in Switzerland, Andreas Fink. Thank you, too, for watching this edition of Inside Story. Drop us a line if you like. Email us at aljazeera.net, preceded by Inside Story. Inside Story at aljazeera.net. From me, David Foster. Goodbye for now.